When you are a member of a green team or a sustainability professional, you will probably need to develop training for your stakeholders so that you can affect the change in the organization that you're looking for. This lesson will cover the planning and preparations you need to make in order to conduct training. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to write a lesson plan that identifies your students, learning objectives, logistics, assessment, instructional strategy, and content for your training. And you'll be able to develop a storyboard for the lesson plan that identifies the 9 steps of instruction. Now let's start by looking at how you plan a training session. We'll be using this useful 6-step template to guide you in your planning efforts. In step 1, you're going to analyze your learners. If you can, get a general idea of who will be attending your training. What is their academic background? What work experience do they have? What prior sustainability knowledge do they have? Do they have a positive, negative, or neutral attitude towards the changes that you're proposing? Do they like to learn as individuals or in groups? Is the group you're training similar in all of those characteristics, or are they very different? All of that information will affect how you develop your training. Step 2 is developing your learning objectives. Learning objectives describe what you expect to see from participants when they're finished with the training in very observable terms. What will you see if they've learned the material? Can they actually operate the new equipment? Are they behaving in more sustainable ways? What level of learning should they have? Do they just need to remember things? Or do they need to use their knowledge and skills to solve problems? And finally, how well do you want them to know it? How fast do they need to be? How accurate? Objectives always have 2 parts, an action verb and the content, which is the knowledge or the skill that they are learning. Objectives may also have the audience, who the students are if it's unclear, the conditions under which the task is performed, and how well it needs to be done. Here is a list of verbs that you might find useful. If students need to learn lower level skills, then what do you need them to do? Do they need to list or recall? Do they need to find something or choose something? Identify, describe, or demonstrate? Or do they need to have higher learning skills? Do they need to be able to evaluate something, or write, or create, or design, or develop, or solve problems, or determine the right path? Step 3 of your lesson plan is to describe the logistics. What is the setup that you'll have, and what will you need? How many people do you expect? Are you creating online or face-to-face training? If face-to-face, what is the best table setup? In small groups, in round tables, or some other setup? And what are you likely to have? Do you have or need a projector or individual computers? How much time do you need for the workshop? 30 minutes is good for a lunchtime workshop. The possibility of running longer workshops will depend on leadership support and operational realities. What equipment and supplies do you need? Access to new equipment, flip charts, large sheets of paper or whiteboards, and the appropriate pens, handouts, or checklists? Is there anything else that participants need to bring? Step 4 is assessing learning. It may seem out of order to develop an assessment before you design your instruction, but that's actually a very important step in your training development. If you develop your assessment shortly after you've written your objectives, you're more likely to focus on assessing what is need to know versus what is nice to know. And that will help you develop only the most important and necessary training, which will help you avoid the perception of wasting employees' time. Make the assessments a positive experience. Start by not calling them assessments. You can call them sharing, or reporting out from groups, or products. Be as realistic or authentic as possible. Make it as close to the actual task as you can. And be sure it's an accurate measure of the learning objective. You can transform your storyboard into slides, or a checklist for the instructor, and/or handouts for the student. Here's some of the steps that you might consider including. Start with an attention step. This can be a story or a statistic, or facts explaining the relevance of what you're going to be covering. Then, cover what it is that they're going to be learning. At the end of the training, what will they be able to do? Connect it to what they already know about the subject. Give an overview of the skill or the task or the tool that they're going to be learning, the purpose, some examples of its use. Then give a demonstration of what they're going to be learning. Break it up into small segments. There's something that says that you can't remember more than 7 items at a time, 7, maybe plus or minus 2. So make sure that you cover smaller segments so that people can remember what they're supposed to be doing. Then give them some practice. This can be a short class activity. Provide feedback. Allow them to share what it is that they went through. Once they've learned the material, give them an assessment, which can be scored with something like a rubric or a checklist. And finally, make sure that they know how to apply it to the real world. Last, there's step 6, developing the content. First, do some research. There may already be an appropriate video or workshop that meets your needs, and this can save you many hours of training development. If not, then use your research to help you develop your own content. As mentioned before, make sure the content matches the learning objectives. Don't include a lot of nice-to-know information. Employees, and for that matter any students, are very busy, and training has to be focused on the specific green tasks they need to learn, whether it is planning a sustainability audit, an analysis of the data they collect, researching the costs of green solutions, or communicating to the rest of the organization. Now it's your turn. Use this template and write a lesson plan for the training that you want to develop. And then move on to the storyboard. Your final product will be a training workshop or seminar that is laser focused on what stakeholders need to know, and that will give you some assurance that they'll be able to use the training after they've left the workshop.